Fall camp has begun for Ole Miss football. I'm Billy Embody. With me is Ben Garrett on this Talk of Champions, powered by our friends at RiverLand Roofing. We've got a ton of takeaways from day one on the practice field for Lane Kiffin and the Rebels, and we get to all of that right now on Talk of Champions.
Protecting homes and businesses from the whims of nature, you need more than just quality materials. You require RiverLand Roofing. Licensed, insured, and certified, RiverLand Roofing offers not only the assurance of excellence, but a tailored approach to your unique structural needs and budget. To learn more about what RiverLand Roofing can do for you and the community, call them at 662-644-4297 or visit riverlandroofing.com.
You're locked into Talk of Champions, an Ole Miss podcast powered by RiverLand Roofing and featuring Ben Garrett and Billy Embody of Rebel Grove.
That is right. Football practice has begun in Oxford for Ole Miss as Lane Kiffin gets ready to take a stab at getting another 10-win season or more under his belt, leading the Rebels. And there to cover it all for us at Rebel Grove is Ben Garrett. I'm Billy Embody on this live Talk of Champions. Happy Tuesday to you guys. Ole Miss did us a favor moving up their report date just one day to Monday, and they got on the practice field Tuesday. And Ben and the rest of the media crew, Jake Thompson, Chuck Rounsville, was able to get out there for us. And before we get into that, Ben, you are set up in maybe a new location for the RiverLand Roofing studio right there in the Manning Center, but we are presented by our friends at RiverLand Roofing. So wherever you are, Ben, we'll consider it a RiverLand studio. Text or call RiverLand today, 662-644-4297. Billy Landis and his entire crew will get you right with what you need on the roofing front, and they're big supporters of Ole Miss as well. So give them a shout for whatever your roofing needs are today. Billy just gave us a shout on the cell phone, and you were in practice, and I was getting ready to record with you, Ben. So happy Tuesday and a happy fall camp.
Happy Tuesday, happy fall camp. I'm here in the defensive team meeting room doing this edition of Talk of Champions. Just walked off the practice field. Lane and the players will talk to them later this afternoon. But we got limited practice viewing. That's typically what it's going to be like. But Ole Miss actually does more than most every other school in the SEC these days. I think we're going to get 11 practice viewings where some schools only have 2. Georgia and Alabama only have 7 apiece. So Lane's really opened it up and allowed us to check out some things. And today we learned a lot. I mean, I think it was a cool experience to be out there and to see the Rebels for the first time this year, only in shirts and shorts, not doing any kind of hitting or anything like that. But some big takeaways from the day that we're going to really get into. But yeah, man, football is here, Billy. It's an exciting time. It's always more fun when football is here. And we're going to have you covered throughout the whole fall camp at Rebel Grove. Check it out. Sign up today for just $1. Finally, we have something other than non-sports topics to talk about on the message board, right? We're excited to get going here. And like I said, a lot to dive into from practice here in the team meeting room, the defensive team meeting room. I'm actually looking at the playbook back here, or the scheme playbook for ULM. I'm not going to touch it, but I was like, oh, there's the ULM plan, so it's really cool to be here, be in it, to see the Rebels again for the first time, and now a lot of notes to get into.
Yeah, we'll make sure that you're invited back there. First of all, we'll leave the playbook alone.
Not touching it. Touching it.
We appreciate RiverLand for hooking us up with so much on the coverage front, and there is so much to come on rebelgrove.com. Sign up for just $1 for your first week. Ben, let's start with this. What was the general vibe out there practice? I mean, describe, short shirts, practice helmets, of course, but pretty low-key day one before the next viewing on Friday. We'll probably see a little bit more energy out there, just as far as, being maybe a little bit more suited up for the Rebels.
Well, it was indoors in the Manning Center. It's really hot in Oxford, Mississippi right now. I mean, it's blistering hot. The defense went out for some outdoor work in the last 15 minutes or so. But the vibe was what you would expect it to be on day one, right? I mean, everyone's excited to be back. I know we're sure as heck excited to be back. And Ole Miss feels the same way. There's a lot of energy, open practice with some fun competition, a local Oxford wide receiver against a reserve defensive back with the whole team cheering on their particular side. And that really got the team into it and having some fun, some team building stuff to start. And then they broke into individual groups and really got their work in. But with the first day, the energy you expect it to be high, but the work is going to be a little bit more muted only because there's so much they can do in shorts and shirts. But I think, for the first day, it went as you expect it to. And the look of Ole Miss looks like another contender. They look like a team that is ready to go out there and contend for every game they play. And Austin Simmons obviously looks like every bit the preseason dynamo that he's been billed to be. Like when we were talking at SEC Media Days, you know this, Bill. We were sitting there with Peter Burns from ESPN or Cole Kubelik. We talked to him and Josh Pate and all these national, J.D. Pickle, all these national guys. And Austin Simmons, this is his team. You can tell it. He's really taken over this program, and it's bled throughout everywhere. That's why there's so much optimism, is because of what Austin Simmons means to this team this year. And so far in day one, again, with very little to do on day one outside of just get back up there and get back started, he was in the middle of everything, right? I mean, even including the little team building thing with the reserve wide receiver and backup cornerback, defensive back. Austin was the one snapping the ball to the quarterback. He's out in front with everything. He's mixed in with everything, and he's the biggest piece. That's not a secret. That's not anything prophetic. That's nothing that you already know as an Ole Miss fan. But you could tell that like a lot of almost everything Ole Miss does revolves around him and his development and his progress and his improvement. So my general takeaway from the vibe was, it felt like football was back. And I think we're all just starved for that. And to see Ole Miss out there in the new look Ole Miss Rebels and some interesting player movement, player positionally, where they move some guys around, including Caleb Odom, who we're going to talk about. A lot of cool things to take away from it. And it all started with a really good vibe out there because it's day one.
Yeah, I do want to talk about injuries right off the bat. That's going to be something that a lot of people focus on, just those initials. Well, who's in, who's out, all those things. And, one thing we got asked on the message board this morning, and I think is worth maybe keeping in mind as you start hearing about who's in the black jersey, which is limited usually, and also for the quarterbacks, is they are going to keep certain guys in bubble wrap, whether they're vital transfers that they're really counting on, or just kind of guys that are truly coming back. And I think one of the ones that we got asked about on the board right away was Jalen Braxton, the Arkansas transfer who was in black today and was a little, just being kept in a bubble wrap, so to speak. But he was out there, which was a big development from the spring where he wasn't. And they're going to keep certain guys like Daquan Wright safe. Even Caleb Cunningham was in a black jersey. So there's a lot of, kind of context that could be shared at certain points with some of these players that are getting hit with the black jersey, or even some that are actually limited in practice. So a couple of those guys that I want to touch on, though, Patrick Cudis, big Arkansas transfer. What did you see from him today, and what's the development on the offensive line there?
That's a good first place to start. Patrick Cudis wasn't in a black jersey, but he was limited in the practice viewing that we got. He wasn't doing much. And in his place, he would be starting at right guard, was P.J. Wilkins and Delano Townsend, both transfers. P.J. Wilkins is from Charlotte and Delano Townsend is from UAB. And with Patrick Cudis watching rather than participating, even though I think they're just protecting him, he's very important for them, not just as a starter at right guard, but he's their number 2 center. Or if Bryson Sanders doesn't carry his weight, then Patrick Cudis probably slides in as your starting center. Without him, the number 2 center was John Wayne Oliver, who I think is a really interesting player that had a good spring. And now they're trying him at center with number 2. That's one area where they got to figure it out. If it's not Patrick Cudis, who is it going to be? And Oliver looks like he's the lead guy right now. But those two guards were transfers, P.J. Wilkins and Delano Townsend. And I think they're really high on both of those guys. And not just because they were starting in place of Patrick Cudis, but because P.J. Wilkins had a really good spring and had a good offseason and summer. Delano Townsend, the physical aspect of the game, man, he's got that in spades. So it's about getting the best 5 in there, but also seeing what you have if something like this does happen. So Patrick Cudis was in the background and watching things while Bryson Sanders, the starting 5 were Diego Pounds at left tackle, Delano Townsend at left guard, Bryson Sanders at center, PJ Wilkins at right guard, and then at right tackle was Jaden Williams. I think obviously it's more about just keeping Patrick healthy and making sure that he's okay. They're going to do that with a lot of certain guys like that. Now, Daquan Wright, for example, he's in a black jersey, like you mentioned, but I think that's more to do with Luke Haas is out until at least October is what I was told. And today had a candidate working at tight end. We've seen this with pictures on social media, Caleb Odom mixing in with the tight end group. And today that's where he worked exclusively as a tight end. And, I think that's really for his long-term future, where Alabama and even Ole Miss now have said, hey, this is where you're probably going to stick. But it really didn't. The move wasn't necessarily precipitated until Luke Haas got hurt. And now Caleb Odom is really mixing in with the tight ends, learning the intricacies of it. I think the blocking angle will be pretty tough, but you can get by using him as a big wide receiver, just like you saw with Evan Ingram early on in his career before he became a pretty good inline blocker. And that's kind of where tight ends have been taken in this modern era of college football. And I think Ole Miss looks at Caleb Odom and says, if we can take this very, very raw piece of clay and maybe turn him into a tight end, the ceiling could be maybe Kyle Pitts, because they have a very similar profile as far as their body build, and the inline blocking is always going to be a challenge because they're converted wide receivers. But I think that's the vision. I'm not saying that's what it's going to be, but I think that's the vision, and it makes sense, and especially when you consider losing Luke Haas for a stretch is a big deal. I mean, he had a great spring. Really had ingratiated himself over the summer. And the issue with Luke Haas for his career has been durability. So unfortunately, already in his Ole Miss career, he's dealing with something that's been a red mark on his resume, durability concerns. But Caleb Odom playing tight end, mixing him with that group, I think is a big deal. It's a fascinating deal, and probably something we're going to be watching throughout the entire fall camp is how Caleb comes along. If he sticks there, it might just be a day one thing, right? They might just say, well, it's day one. Let's see what it looks like early, and then mix him in to the wide receiver group again. But I really like what they have at wide receiver. And because of the depth of the wide receiver room, they're allowed to make this kind of lottery ticket move and just see what they've got at least early, because again, it not necessarily is going to stick, but for now, Caleb Odom's with the tight end. So that's kind of a encompassing view right now of what the offense looks like with Patrick Cudis limited, but again, not in a black jersey, which I think is notable because, TJ Daugherty was in a black jersey all throughout the spring. And the only reason he didn't practice at all is because he had a long year. They wanted to give him some rest. I think with Patrick Cudis, they want to take it easy with him, especially early on, because he's so vitally important to the makeup of that offensive line to start.
And as you look at this offensive line, it's one of the major storylines. And I think the left tackle and the right tackle spots are pretty much solidified for the most part. But the big competition is Delano Townsend, PJ Wilkins, like you said, at those guard positions.
Yep.
Those guys in particular battling. They do feel like, from talking with sources, and we shared this a little bit on the board as well, they feel like they have a nice group of depth. And that doesn't necessarily mean right off the bat that we're going to sit here and say, oh, they're going to pile up 2,000 rushing yards and Austin Simmons is never going to get touched and things like that. We know the offensive line needs to improve as far as their play on the field, and they're a massive piece as far as the competition in fall camp. There's a lot to be made about the secondary, who's going to step up at the other linebacker position. And of course, the running back room is completely revamped, and you have some new faces at wide receiver. But the offensive line is that key cog as fall camp gets underway, which is why it is so important that Patrick Cudis was limited in fall camp on day one. Now we'll see how things progress, and maybe Lane Kiffin will give us an update this afternoon as media day gets underway with the Rebels around 2:00 or so. But Patrick Cudis not being fully healthy is a big storyline because it was John Wayne Oliver as the number 2 center. But they will have a versatile group of offensive linemen that they feel like they can plug in guys along the interior. Trez Davis was a tackle at Maryland, but could play, the left or the right guard spot. You also have, guys like, Devin Harper or Connor Howes. They primarily worked at tackle, but could they pop inside? And this is the finding of the right 5 is so important. So hopefully for Ole Miss's sake, they do get a fully healthy Patrick Cudis here soon enough. But the guy in the backfield that was leading the way, Kewan Lacey, the Missouri transfer, was the leading back there. And, what was your impression of him, just kind of seeing him now with the summer under his belt and being able to now get more comfortable in the offense and just get out there on day one, Ben?
Great question, and I'm going to hit all on Keywan in just a second. But again, with Patrick Cudis, he wasn't in a black jersey. We don't want to say it's necessarily injury. It could just be that they're wanting to protect him, like Bill said early on in the podcast, wrap him up in bubble wrap, right, and make sure that a guy that's so important just gets to the season opener, because he's had some durability concerns too in his career. So I don't want to say that necessarily he's we're concerned about his health, just so much that we can they're limiting Patrick Cudis early on, because really, what more do you need to see from him? You need to see a lot from Bryson Sanders from practice one all the way to the opener. Same thing with these transfers, PJ Wilkins and Delano Townsend. And you're right, man. The depth, they really like what they have depth-wise on the offensive line, which I think was a little bit surprising. I don't think that they were necessarily like they liked what they did as far as adding high schoolers and transfers, offensive linemen. But I think they were still like, did we get enough? And right now, it looks like they've got some legitimate numbers. And one player that you mentioned that I failed to mention, Devin Harper, they love him. Talking to the coaches and all throughout the summer, that one guy that got consistently raved about was Devin Harper. Now, it's hard for true freshmen to come in and contribute in an offensive line rotation, but I think Devin Harper's one they're really, really optimistic about contributing sooner rather than later if he can pick up on the playbook and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's a really good point you bring up about the depth of the offensive line, and what it could be. Now, durability is a concern because not just Patrick Cudis, Jaden Williams has dealt with durability concerns for the last handful of years as Ole Miss's highest graded tackle the last 2 years when healthy. So can Jaden Williams stay healthy? If he doesn't, is Terez Davis ready to play? I think that was a really big key addition for them after the spring, because Davis could play any number of areas. He's without a doubt a potentially invaluable swing offensive lineman at either tackle spot, at either guard, but they have more depth of options than maybe that I think they thought they had coming out of spring. Now, in regards to Keywan, he had an incredible spring, really made a great first impression. Logan Diggs, I didn't see him out there today. I probably just missed him. He could be one that they're taking it easy on. I could have just completely missed seeing him. But when the first team unit ran out there against the first team defense, it was Keywan taking the primary snaps as the first team running back. And I just think he brings a different dynamic to the backfield that obviously they didn't have last year. But he could be the total package. Now, he's not the bruiser that maybe Shakai Mills-Knight can be, or Logan Diggs can be, even Dominic Thomas can be in short yardage. But where Keywan doesn't have that, he makes up for it with explosiveness, possibly as a pass catcher, but certainly as an east-west kind of guy who, if you get him in space, man, he can be really, really effective for you. And right now, Austin, very early in his development, is looking short, right? He's looking first and foremost for short passes to get the ball out of his hand quickly. So Keywan could play a really big role just settling Austin Simmons in. I remember one time in team, talking about kind of Austin's over-reliance on short yardage throws right now as he just gets into a rhythm and gets chemistry and everything with his offense. He forced a ball on a little curl into double coverage when he had Caden Lee on a slot fade, one-on-one coverage, and Caden had gotten a step on the defensive back, and he instead took the check down. So there's going to be some of that because he's a first-year starter, but that's where Keywan can really add even more value. Now, the pass pro piece is going to be fascinating. I don't know where he is in that. They didn't do a lot of that today. Quick whistle, it's shortened shirts. They're not going to, go out there and allow you to touch the quarterback or hit and stuff like that. So the pass pro angle is another thing we'll be watching with Keywan moving forward throughout fall camp. But yes, certainly notable that he was the one out there running, because we knew he had a good spring, talking to the coaches and all the sources that we talked to between spring and now opening of fall camp. And again, the shiftiness and the space eating that he could do is certainly something that they didn't have last year. They maybe thought they had going into the year, but Ulysses Bentley, for whatever reason, they just didn't trust him after a while. Keywan, that's kind of shiftiness. Now, can you add the other components to your game, right, including the pass pro, that can take your game to another level? But for a starting point for a guy that is really important for a room that struggled last year, yeah, a great first day for him, and certainly an encouraging sign that he was number one with the first team group with Austin in the Ole Miss offensive backfield.
Ole Miss did get A.J. Maddox back healthy, so that's a good thing, following the spring. But at wide receiver, this is a position where you're getting another new face into the mix. Traylon Ray comes in. He was a really productive wide receiver at West Virginia, really intriguing, and they were somehow able to get him despite Florida State wanting him, and they kind of I think, surprised some people that they got him. When you add guys like Dejon Stribling, Caleb Odom, some of the other big time transfer additions that were more talked up, he was injured. He did come in with an injury, but the bright side is he is somebody that is going to be here multiple years. He's going to have an opportunity to make his mark in the future. He's only he's only in his third season now. He played in 12 games as a freshman at West Virginia. Obviously, things didn't go so hot in Morgantown, and they made a move, but he played in another 10 games. But he had an injury. He got it repaired. He sat out really almost all of spring, pretty much all of spring, and he's back. And so that gives them a really nice option behind Harrison Wallace as well.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that I was an immediate takeaway, jumped off the field as we're out there watching this practice or the limited viewing that we got. Man, this wide receiver group last year, the wide receivers were great. Trey Harris dealt with injury, missed games, and that hurt them. Juice Wells was up and down. Man, if you look at this group, and you'll see it quickly as an Ole Miss fan whenever you get to see this team for the first time, but I can go ahead and tell you this is a deeper wide receiver group than last year's group. And I don't know if necessarily they have the number one guy yet. Dejon Stribling looks like he could be that guy. Harrison Wallace has impressed me from the minute he got here from Penn State. He just constantly is making plays, a potentially incredible deep threat. And I thought it was really interesting because he's playing the Y, and out behind him was Traylon Ray. I was under the impression, at least from talking to sources, not seeing him all through the spring because he was in a black jersey. I was under the impression that Traylon was more of a slot guy. That is not what he is. He's got more height to him than I thought. Pretty well put together, and he was running as the number 2 wide behind Harrison Wallace, while Dejon Stribling was manning X, and then of course Z was Caden Lee, who is as good as it gets in the league. Because I think not getting talked about enough. To have 70 plus catches and no drops last year, be the second leading receiver for Ole Miss last year, and not to get the preseason recognition I think he deserves. He's going to show some folks this year, and a lot of that will come from the depth of options around him that can stay on the field. Harrison Wallace, I think, is in for a big year. Dejon Stribling looks the part, but Traylon Ray could be a big piece to this, and for him to be back healthy for that wide receiver group that I think is deeper, it shows. Like Deuce Alexander is another player that we don't talk about enough. I mean, he's a veteran player from Wake Forest who mixed into your 2 deep is a really valuable piece as well. And because of the depth of that group specifically, I think that's why they were able to experiment, right? Move Caleb Odom with a Luke Haas injury, let him play tight end, let him be that guy, see what you have at least early on, because it might not stick. Maybe he's just more of a big wide receiver and you just try to figure it out. But I know that Caleb really kind of struggled to get his footing in the spring, and maybe this is the move that kind of unlocks him. But the only reason they're able to do it is because they have real depth of options. Caleb Cunningham was out there. I made sure to watch him, number 3, and we'll have practice highlights at Rebel Grove later today. I shot a bunch of them, was meaning to get them to Bill before we sat down and recorded so you could watch these things if you're watching on YouTube now. And if you are, man, thank you. We appreciate you. But I'll do better for next time. Friday, we'll be doing another one of these after practice because that's our next availability. But yeah, Caleb Cunningham, I've got a lot of video of him. He was in a black jersey, but like he's right now running with, like the 3rd or 4th team because he wasn't here in the spring. He's a late arrival, but you can see it, right? Like he had a bad drop, a lazy drop, but like physically there's a lot there. And when that guy, who was a 5-star prospect, according to Rivals, was the number 1 prospect in Mississippi, when he's at a starting place of, hey man, get your footing, get settled. You don't have to worry about being good from jump because look at what else we have. I think that's a really important thing to note about the offensive depth because yes, on paper, Ole Miss is replacing over 70% of its all 22, but you've went and gotten the number 1 wide receiver from Oklahoma State, the number 1 wide receiver from Penn State and Harrison Wallace, Traylon Ray, who was a top 2-3 option for West Virginia. All of these pieces together make for a really good room. There's not going to be any lack of weapons for Austin Simmons, but that tight end piece is really the thing I'm focused on a lot because if Daquan does get hurt, like who is the guy? Hayden Bradley they like a lot, but is it Caleb? Is it the New Mexico State transfer whose name escapes me right now? But Trace, yes. Yep. Trace Buckler or whatever his name. Yeah, that's he was out there a little bit, but it all comes back to how strong and deep this wide receiver group is, which for day one could not have been more obvious. It's a good group.
And let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball. And look, we appreciate James McDonald for jumping in the chat there and asking how Kewan Lacey is progressing. Things look to be in good shape there, as Ben said, with him being the starting guy on day one, and we kind of expect him to be right there with Logan Diggs and those two options. And definitely give the show a rewatch if you just got in on the stream about 11:24 there, James. And I think we hit on Kewan at length, but we do want to move over to the defensive side of the ball. Again, these are just day one, so of course the depth charts in Sharpie, everybody knows that, everybody's finalized, and I'm just kidding, obviously.
No.
But
it's as in sand as it could possibly be. That's why it took me a minute to realize that Billy was doing his sarcastic voice because you got that dry wit about you. But I was like, yeah. I mean, a lot of this needs to be taken with a grain of salt because it is day one. But this is what we saw, and I've got a lot of notes here, including on the defensive side. One thing that I wanted to see, Suntarine Perkins. There is another area of his game to expand, and that is playing linebacker more. Now, he was a linebacker in high school a lot, but his best trait is his ability to rush the quarterback and get after the quarterback off the edge. However, today, at times, he was dropping into coverage, which is new for him in year 3 as a junior. This is an All-American. This is the best player arguably on your team. I mean, this is a potential first-round pick. A lot of early first-round projections for Suntarine from CBS and others because of what he could be. But can you open him up even more and really take some of those responsibilities vacated by a Chris Paul, who's now with the Rams, and give them to your best player? And I saw some of that today, him dropping into coverage, guarding tight ends. But again, it started with him on the edge. And when he was on the edge and Womack, Deshaun Womack, the transfer from LSU, was on the other side. The two defensive tackles were Jam Brown and Xavier Harris to start. The two linebackers were, of course, TJ Daugherty, who's the captain in the middle, and Taj Chambers, who they absolutely love. The transfer from Missouri State. Oh, no, excuse me, Jaden Yates. It was Jaden Yates. I think I wrote down. It was one of Taj Chambers, Jaden Yates. Taj Chambers, 26. Yes, thank you. Taj Chambers from Missouri State was right there with TJ Daugherty, and they really like him. They like not only his ability as a linebacker, but his pass rushing ability. Same thing with Jaden Yates as a pass rusher, more so than a true linebacker. I think you'll see a lot of him whenever Suntarine does drop into that linebacker space. Then you'll see a lot of Jaden Yates rushing the passer. Cam Franklin looks like $1 million. William Eccles looks like $1 million, but they're, of course, going to bring them along slowly. These are potential first-year starters. So the veterans ran out there first, and Suntarine was doing a lot of dropping, which I thought was certainly notable because that's an area of his game that he just hadn't done a lot of in his first 2 years. And last year, he tied for the team lead in sacks. He, was one of the team leaders in tackles for loss. But now there's even more of a growth potential for Suntarine Perkins, who's already the best player on your team, because they're giving him some more linebacker responsibilities as he tries to, take his game to an even another level. So I thought that was pretty notable. And of course, the secondary, right? The secondary is what we're focusing on. We're worried about. We're thinking, spring was ugly, Bill. I mean, it wasn't good. The defensive back, the secondary. I mean, I think Ole Miss even looked around and went, "Oh man, this is just not it." And today, you saw a little bit of more, semblance of normalcy. Chris Graves, I mean, this is a player that's been here a while. He started at one spot. It's time for him. So they're going to give him every opportunity to earn a starting job. They need him. He's been in the system. He's a veteran guy, former transfer from Miami. They think he has so much potential. He has to get on the field and start. And Ricky Fletcher was running with the number 2s, and I've heard nothing but good things about Ricky Fletcher and how he's probably the most talented of all the cornerbacks that they have, and he's going to start sooner rather than later. But today, Antonio Kite from Auburn, the transfer from Auburn,
Freaky.
that didn't Ricky Fletcher. What else?
He's freaky.
Freaky.
Sorry.
Yes, sorry.
That's why I don't talk over you, but I did anyway on that.
Well, I'm sitting in the team meeting room of the defensive team meeting room, and like the sound and stuff kind of bouncing off the walls. I can't hear it like I used to. I need to give me some headphones for next time. But Antonio Kite, I thought that was a big deal, man, because there was a question of whether he's going to play safety or cornerback. Missed all the spring. I was like, who is 33? Oh, yeah, Antonio Kite. So it was Graves and Antonio Kite. And then the safeties were Sage Ryan, who's going to start at safety. Like, he's going to be one of the 3 stars. You can go ahead and write that down. What's today? On July 29th, Sage Ryan will be starting at one of those 3 safety spots.
That's like an erasable marker.
Yes.
Not just short of a Sharpie.
Yes. We're a little short of a Sharpie, but better than sand. So go ahead and mark that one down. Kapina Gushkin, I think, has made a great first impression and really fits exactly what they're looking for as far as his physicality at that star. The question is free safety. Nick Cole is there today. He's a veteran, a lot like Chris Graves. If he's ever going to come on and be something, it's now. He's got to do it, and he was out there first. A big year for Nick Cole if he is going to be a contributor for Ole Miss football. But that was the starting five, and while that might not knock you over, right? That might not blow you over. What it does is you look at the depth on the sidelines and you think, oh, I can see it now. I can see the mix of Tavoy Fagan and Ricky Fletcher and Jalen Braxton if he can get out of that black jersey and play one of corner or safety. I think now that TJ Banks, and this has not been reported, we'll ask Lane about it, but TJ Banks, from the tragic shooting stuff with Corey Adams, he was hurt too, and he didn't have to have surgery, I was told. I don't know that for sure because no one's commented about it officially or spoken about it on the record. But he had moved to safety, and he was at least in the two deep. Now does that mean Jalen Braxton, because TJ with his knee deal, after all of that, probably out for the year, if not out for multiple months? Jalen Braxton, is he going to be a safety? He's got to get on the field first, and that's where they want him. And I think that's kind of where they're going to put him, at least to start, especially when you see Antonio Kite starting at the other cornerback spot and, Ricky Fletcher and Tavoy Fagan on the sideline to push those guys eventually, if not, as soon as tomorrow. So a lot of mixing and matching. Those are the two spots, offensive line and secondary. That's where you're going to see the most movement and potential storylines as far as position battles. Everywhere else, man, they were pretty daggum impressive, I thought. And just from the look test, and again, they're in shorts and shirts, and it's the first day, and everybody got bigger and faster and stronger over the summer. I would still say
best summer of the Lane Kiffin era, right?
Every single year is the best summer ever. I still, I was pretty impressed, and I tried to go into it with an open mind, and because they did lose a lot. I mean, you're replacing a first rounder at quarterback, you're replacing, a second rounder at wide receiver, all these things, but Ole Miss is now in a place as a program where it's not about rebuilding. They reloaded, and you can see that, and that's very encouraging if you're an Ole Miss fan. And with a favorable schedule, there's nothing on day one that would deter you from thinking that they'll certainly, according to, I think BetMGM had them at an 8.5 win total. Yeah, I mean, nothing changed that today. I think I would take the over right now, and because they have such depth of options at wide receiver in the most important positions for a Lane Kiffin team. But there are some things to figure out. The offensive line, we think they're a little stronger than maybe we did after spring. The secondary, it doesn't look like a hot mess anymore, but can you get the right mix? And, that last year's defense was historic, right? I mean, I think the biggest loss that we don't talk enough about is Trey Amos. Like Amos,
gosh, he's killing it with Washington right now.
Killing it. Dominated the side of the field by himself from day one last year. No one challenged him as cornerback one. He was that good from starting. He's going to start on day one for Washington. This is a true shutdown cornerback, and that for me is the biggest question mark. Not that somebody's got to step in and be Trey Amos. It's how do you make up for that, knowing that you don't have a Trey Amos, right? Because that eliminates a lot of headaches and a lot of questions when he's got one side of the field taken care of by himself. I don't think they don't have that luxury this year, but they do have more bodies now, certainly, than they did after the spring when it looked like they were in for a world of hurt for a little while.
Yeah, Randall Joyner's going to have another good group. Deshaun Womack, Xavier Harris, Jam Brown, Suntarian Perkins kind of being that front four, so to speak, from what you guys saw at practice as well. Not too worried about the defensive line, though. They did take a little bit of a hit with Akilo Stone as he transferred out of the program, went to Georgia Tech. So a depth hit there along the interior, but this is why you try to recruit that position as best you can with guys like Andrew Maddox who are going to get their opportunities, as well as they got plenty of depth there. It seems like it's just a matter of staying healthy, and we'll be watching very closely along that defensive line to see how other guys emerge as well throughout fall camp. So again, a lot of the vets taking the lead for Ole Miss today on the first day of fall practice. Before we go, do want to remind you guys to head over to riverlandroofing.com and check out all they can do for you, and also as well, give them a call, 662-644-4297. You could text that number as well. And of course, make sure you reach out to our friend Andy Ludicky at myperfectfranchise.net. He can walk you through the franchise ownership process, what fits your family, what fits your goals. And he can do all of that for you because he knows everything there is to know about franchise ownership and how he can take your business and make it the right fit for you, whether it be your financial, time commitment, your goals overall as far as being a business owner. And we appreciate you guys for checking in with him at 404-973-9901 or hit him up at Andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Go to myperfectfranchise.net today and learn more about how the franchise ownership world can change your life and help you meet your financial goals today. So, Ben Garrett, enjoy your time over there in the Manning Center. We appreciate James and all of you guys for chiming in on the chat as well. So we are looking forward to seeing you guys. This has been a record-setting live podcast as well. As we
you think they're excited for football, Bill?
Yeah, I'm so excited. I'm excited to lay out our plan.
Those numbers went crazy really quick on the views on this thing. I went, oh, they just needed some football. They needed football, and it is back, man. It is really fun that it's back. And I was relieved to just be walking through the doors again to see another year, and this is year 18 for me. And yeah, I'm getting old, but man, that part of it will never get old, right? No. This is what we signed up for. And yeah, for a first day, heck of a lot of fun. I think we learned a lot of things. I really do. And usually on day one, you think, man, I don't know what I'm going to dig out of this, but I know I got to dig out something. Today, they gave us plenty. And again, Lane is giving us, 11 practice viewings, which is far more than most anybody else in the SEC. So I appreciate Lane for doing that and be, locked in here on Talk of Champions, powered by RiverLand Roofing, 662-644-4297, riverlandroofing.com. Be locked in here, be locked in at Rebel Grove, because I'll have highlights. Chuck will have his practice report. I'll have more observations. Billy, I mean, we're just going to be constantly bringing you as much as we can from fall camp, because what y'all all give a crap about the most has finally come back, and we're having a blast with it, man. I'm super excited.
Awesome. We'll see you guys on another edition of Talk of Champions. Thanks for joining us live, whether it be on Twitter or YouTube. We appreciate you all. We'll hear from you next time in the chat, and we'll catch you next time on another edition of Talk of Champions later this week. Thanks for joining us. See you guys next time.